Welcome to the Curious Case. It's always a joy to have you here tonight. Tell me, do you prefer the sound of crackling rain or the quiet of falling snow? Your answers keep this little corner alive, and I love reading every one of them. So, settle in, wrap your hands around your cup, and listen closely. Because tonight, we open a door that should have stayed closed. Now, let's pour the tea and begin tonight's mystery. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the village lay still. A thin frost clung to the windows. Inside the small sitting room, Miss Marple set down her gloves. Mrs. Weatherby smiled from the armchair. "So good of you to come, Miss Marple. The weather is dreadful for a walk." "It clears the mind," Miss Marple said quietly. Her eyes moved to the tea tray. 2 cups, a plate of scones. Everything perfectly arranged. The scent of butter filled the air. Comforting, familiar. But Mrs. Weatherby's hands trembled as she poured. Her cheer sounded just a little too bright. "Sugar?" she asked. "1, thank you." Miss Marple stirred, watching. Mrs. Weatherby talked about the fair, the church bazaar, the roses that wouldn't bloom this year, harmless chatter. But her eyes were tired, the kind of tired that doesn't come from work. "You've been keeping busy," Miss Marple said gently. "Yes, well, one must," Mrs. Weatherby replied. Her smile twitched. The spoon in her hand clinked too long against the cup. Through the open window came the faint hum of the lane. Someone passing by whistled a tune, then stopped. The sound faded. Silence settled again. Mrs. Weatherby sighed. "They say another storm is coming." "So I've heard," Miss Marple said. "Best to keep inside when it does." The clock on the mantel ticked, each sound sharp, measured, deliberate. Mrs. Weatherby tried to change the subject. She asked about the vicar's sermon, about the new baker. Miss Marple answered politely, but she was listening for what wasn't said. Every sentence Mrs. Weatherby spoke felt rehearsed. Every pause filled too quickly. A woman avoiding her own thoughts. Then came the knock. 3 quick taps. Mrs. Weatherby startled. "Oh, he must be early." She rose too fast. The saucer rattled against the cup. Miss Marple watched as she opened the door. "Mr." Alton stood there, tall, tidy, polite, a brown envelope in his hand. "Evening, Mrs. Weatherby," he said. "Post for you." He hesitated. His eyes darted to Miss Marple, then back to the envelope. It came marked as urgent. Mrs. Weatherby's face paled. Her fingers trembled as she took it. "Oh, thank you, Mr. Alton." He nodded quickly. "Best deliver it myself, seeing as the hour's late." He tipped his hat and left. The door closed. Silence again. Mrs. Weatherby stood by the fire, staring at the letter. Her lips moved, but no words came. "Bad news?" Miss Marple asked. "I'm not sure," she whispered. She slipped the envelope onto the mantel beside the clock. Then she forced a smile. "More tea?" Miss Marple nodded slowly. Her eyes lingered on the trembling hand that lifted the teapot. Steam rose between them, thin and fragile. A calm evening, a friendly visit, a letter unopened, and yet Miss Marple felt it. A weight in the air, a silence too careful. Something in that cottage no longer fit. She glanced at the envelope once more. The red stamp gleamed faintly in the firelight. One word, urgent. Miss Marple folded her hands. Her gaze didn't move. The fire popped. Mrs. Weatherby smiled again too quickly. Outside, the frost thickened on the glass. Inside, nothing moved but the flame. Miss Marple lowered her eyes to the teacup. Her reflection trembled in the dark liquid. And then it came to her. A small, certain thought. The kind she never ignored. Something was wrong. But something felt wrong. The scream cut through the lane. Sharp. Sudden. Miss Marple stopped mid-step. Another cry followed. Voices rose behind hedges. Doors opened. Feet hurried across the frosted ground. She moved faster. Her shawl brushed the gate as she reached the corner. Lights flicked on in windows. Shadows gathered. Whispers spread. "Weatherby Cottage. Something's happened." Miss Marple pushed through the small crowd. faces pale, eyes wide. Someone pointed. The door. It's open. The front door hung half open. The fire inside still glowed against the walls. No wind, only the faint crackle of the embers. Miss Marple stepped inside, her eyes adjusted quickly. Nothing disturbed, nothing overturned. Yet the room felt wrong, a stillness too heavy. Near the table lay Mrs. Weatherby, her hand outstretched toward the hearth. Her shawl twisted around her arm. No sign of struggle, no broken glass, no toppled chair. Just a body that had fallen quietly. Mrs. Alton gasped behind her. "Oh, heavens!" is she, but the answer arrived with hurried footsteps. Dr. Sims rushed in, bag in hand, breath unsteady. He knelt beside the body, pressed 2 fingers to the wrist, checked the eyes, listened for breath. He sighed. "Gone," he said softly. "Heart failure, most likely." Sudden. A murmur swept through the doorway. Villagers exhaled in disbelief. "Poor soul, she seemed fine today. I saw her at the shop. Such a shame." But Miss Marple didn't join the chorus. She stood perfectly still, her gaze lowered. 2 teacups waited on the table. One overturned. Tea spilled in a smooth arc across the cloth. The other sat untouched. Steam gone cold. She moved closer. Her hand hovered over the spilled tea. The pattern was clean. No tremor spill. No accidental splash, a deliberate fall, or a sudden collapse. Dr. Sims glanced up. "A tragic thing, Miss Marple." Her heart must have given out. Miss Marple nodded, but her eyes stayed on the cups. 1 cup, untouched, completely full. Her seat still held the cushion's faint pressure, the chair not pushed back, as if she had risen only halfway, only for a moment, only before something stopped her. A villager whispered behind her. "She was alone tonight," another answered. "I saw a light earlier. Maybe Mr. Alton brought more post." Miss Marple heard every word, but she didn't turn. She studied the carpet. Clear, no disturbances, except for one faint mark, a slight scuff near Mrs. Weatherby's shoe. Small, precise. Not from panic, not from a stumble, from someone else's step. Miss Marple straightened slowly. Dr. Sims spoke again. "These things happen. Her age, her worries, the weather." "Yes," Miss Marple replied softly. "But sometimes the heart stops for other reasons." He looked at her, confused. She offered nothing more. The villagers drifted back into the lane. Soft murmurs, steps crunching on, frost. A single lantern still glowed by the gate. Miss Marple remained inside. Her eyes returned to the untouched cup. Her thoughts moved quietly. Calm, measured, certain. Something had moved in this room tonight. Something small, something precise, something not heart failure. She folded her hands, took one last look at the quiet fire, then at Mrs. Weatherby's still form, and she knew. She watched quietly. The first thread had been pulled. The morning lay quiet over Street Merrymead. Cold ashes in the hearth gave off a faint, dry smell. Miss Marple stepped inside Weatherby Cottage once more. Ellen, the housekeeper, stood in the parlour with a cloth in hand. Her shoulders shook as she dusted the mantel. Tears slipped down her cheeks without sound. "Oh, Miss Marple, I still can't believe it," she whispered. Her voice cracked as she wiped the same corner again and again. Miss Marple approached slowly. "You were close to her," she said. Ellen nodded. "She was kind, always kind. I never thought—" Her sentence trailed off into trembling silence. Miss Marple waited. Patience always worked better than pressure. Ellen swallowed hard. "I couldn't sleep last night," she said. "I kept thinking about her face, the way she looked on the floor." Miss Marple glanced around the room. Everything was neat, too neat, nothing out of place. Ellen sniffed and pressed her hand to her mouth. She was afraid, Miss Marple, more than she ever let on. "Afraid of what?" Miss Marple asked. Ellen wiped her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. "Letters," she whispered. Her gaze flickered toward the mantel. She kept saying they were getting worse. Worse how? I don't know. She wouldn't show me. But every time one arrived, she grew quieter, like something was closing in on her. Miss Marple's eyes moved to the mantel where the urgent envelope had rested. Now, it was gone. Not a trace. Nothing but the faint outline left in dust. When did she receive the first one? Miss Marple asked. 2 weeks ago, Ellen said. She hid them in the writing desk, locked the drawer every night, never told anyone, not even me. Miss Marple turned slightly. The drawer is locked now? No, Ellen said, her voice lowered. It was open when I came in this morning. Open? Yes. And empty. Miss Marple took that in quietly. No forced marks, no broken lock. Someone had used a key, or had already been inside last night. Ellen wiped the table near the window. Her hand halted mid-movement. She stared at the floor. At one point, she whispered, I thought I saw someone outside. Miss Marple stepped closer. What did you see? A shadow, tall, right by the window, just after sunset. Did Mrs. Weatherby see it? Yes. And she froze. Her whole body stiffened. She said, Not tonight. Please, not tonight. Then she shut the curtains. Miss Marple felt her chest tighten. Fear that precise never came from imagination. Did you tell the inspector? Ellen shook her head. No. He said it was heart failure. He didn't ask about shadows. He didn't ask about anything. Miss Marple touched the edge of the windowsill. Smooth. Too smooth. The rest of the sill carried a thin layer of settled dust. This patch did not. Someone had wiped it. Recently. Purposefully. She scanned the nearby table. Another wiped patch. Circular. Large enough for a hand. Ellen followed her gaze and whispered, I only dusted this morning. Those marks weren't here. Miss Marple's expression did not change, but her mind moved sharply. Cleaned. Not dusted. Erased. Someone had stood here last night. Someone had touched this surface. And someone had come back to remove the trace. Miss Marple folded her hands. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Someone had cleaned more than dust. The lane was silent. When Miss Marple reached Mr. Alton's gate, no birds, no chatter, only the faint scrape of his broom on the stone path, the single sensory cue. He looked up when he saw her. His smile was thin. His eyes did not meet hers. Miss Marple. A sad time, isn't it? He set the broom aside and wiped his hands on his coat. A small bunch of flowers rested on the step. For Mrs. Weatherby, he said quickly. Thought I should bring them by the cottage later. Miss Marple nodded. You were kind to deliver her letter last night. He stiffened. Yes. Yes, of course. Routine post. Nothing unusual. Just bank matters. The words rushed out too quickly, almost overlapping. Miss Marple watched his hands. A small ink stain marked his right thumb. Dark. Fresh. The same shade as the smudge she had seen beneath the envelope's red stamp. You've been writing this morning? He blinked. Oh yes, well, notes. Nothing important. Just sorting my accounts. His gaze darted to the flowers. He picked them up again, held them tightly, too tightly. Miss Marple kept her tone calm. You knew her well? Oh yes. Wonderful woman. Very proper. Very careful. A stickler for details. He swallowed. She mentioned her will last week, you know. Miss Marple's brows lifted slightly. She did? He nodded fast. Yes. Yes. Said she needed to revise it. Said time was running short. He stopped. Realized what he'd said. Cleared his throat. But you know how older ladies talk. They say dramatic things. Nothing serious. Miss Marple tilted her head. Strange. She didn't mention it yesterday. Mr. Alton froze. Oh, well, that doesn't mean anything. People forget conversations. You know how it is. He shifted from foot to foot. His fingers twitched around the flowers. The stems bent under his grip. And the letter? Miss Marple asked softly. The urgent one? He hesitated, then forced a smile. Told you. Bank business. A notice, perhaps. Nothing that would trouble her. But she looked troubled. Miss Marple said, very troubled. His throat bobbed. For a moment, maybe. People worry too much. She stepped closer. He stepped back, just half an inch, barely a movement. But she noticed. Mr. Alton, she said quietly, did you open the letter? His face drained. No. Why would I? I only brought it. And you did not mention it was stamped urgent until pressed, Miss Marple said. You also knew what it contained before she ever opened it. He blinked hard. You can't prove that. His voice trembled. Your thumb says much, she replied, and your words say more. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His breath quickened. He tightened his grip around the flowers. Petals cracked beneath his fingers. People talk too much in this village, he muttered. People assume things. People twist everything. Miss Marple watched him, silent. Still, calculating. He glanced at the door behind her, then at the lane, then at his ink-stained hand. Finally, he looked down and whispered, I should go. He hurried inside, door closing too fast, too hard. Miss Marple stood on the step, hands folded, mind steady, thoughts precise. He had revealed himself without trying. Slips, contradictions, fear, and one truth more dangerous than all the rest. He knew more than he should. Charles arrived at Weatherby Cottage just after noon. A cab door slammed, then quick footsteps on the path. Miss Marple waited by the gate as he approached. He smiled at once. Young, confident, too confident. Aunt Jane, he said cheerfully, though they were not related. I heard the dreadful news. Came straight from London. His coat was stylish but worn. His shoes scuffed. His pockets empty, she could tell by the way they hung. You were close to your aunt, Miss? Marple asked. Oh, yes. Well, close enough, he replied, shrugging lightly. He flashed a charming grin. The kind used to soften questions. He carried no luggage, no bag, no change of clothes, Miss Marple noticed. She always noticed. She relied on you? She asked softly. I suppose, he said, brushing dust from his sleeve. Family duty and all that came the moment I heard. You know me, devoted nephew. His laugh was easy. Too easy. A rehearsed sound. Miss Marple walked beside him toward the cottage. You've been in London? Yes. Busy life there, very busy. Work keeping you occupied? He laughed again. Work? Yes, well, it's complicated. Too many numbers. Too many deadlines. Debts. Ha, everyone has debts. He tried to wave it off, but the laugh cracked. Just slightly. Miss Marple's eyes lowered to his cuff. A small brown mark. Round, shiny at the edge. Burn yourself? She asked casually. He yanked his hand. Back. Oh, this? Nothing. Just steam from a kettle. A kettle? Yes. This morning. In the kitchen. Thought I'd make tea. Didn't want the old place to feel empty. She paused. Yet, Ellen said she found the kettle untouched. He swallowed. Oh well, maybe she missed it. She's stressed, confused. You know how these things go. Miss Marple didn't answer. She watched him adjust the cuff again. Twice. A nervous habit. Inside the parlor, he sat quickly. Too quickly, as though wanting to claim the room before she questioned him further. He glanced around, eyes skimming shelves, drawers, the mantelpiece, looking for something, or checking whether something was gone. She received a letter last night, Miss Marple said. A troubling one. Charles froze, then forced a smile. Oh? Letters come every day. Nothing shocking about a letter. This one was marked urgent. He shifted in his seat. I'm sure it was nothing. Bank matters. Or bills. She had plenty of those. Miss Marple leaned closer. And you arrived early. Very early. Before the news had even reached the Morning Post. He laughed again. This time, the sound rang hollow. What can I say? Good instincts. Family intuition. Besides, Aunt needed help. Help with what? Everything. He spoke too quickly. Then again, everything. Miss Marple let the silence settle. People filled silence with truth if given time. Charles cleared his throat. Did she, mention any changes? Papers? Arrangements? Arrangements? Miss Marple repeated. He nodded. Her affairs. You know, her will. She was thinking of adjusting it. She didn't tell you that, Miss Marple said. Not yesterday. Not last week. He blinked. Well, she meant to. She must have. Miss Marple folded her hands. His eyes darted away. Then back, then down. But when she said the next word, his whole body reacted. And the inheritance? His breath stopped. His shoulders tensed. His fingers tightened around the chair. Just for a moment. But she saw it. Every shift, every flinch. He tried to smile again. Tried to speak. But the damage was done. He had revealed the truth without realizing it. He flinched before the word inheritance. Inspector Slack arrived just after midday. His coat still carried the faint smell of damp wool, the single sensory cue. He marched through the gate without pause. Miss Marple, he said, nodding briskly. We've got a situation. She folded her hands. What situation, Inspector? The letter, he said. The urgent one. It's gone. Miss Marple tilted her head. Gone? Gone? Yes. Vanished. Ellen says it was on the mantel last night. This morning, nothing. Ellen stood in the doorway, pale and trembling. I locked the study, she whispered. I know I did. I checked twice. No one could have taken anything. Inspector Slack frowned. But the drawer's empty, and the mantel is clean. Someone touched the mantel, Miss Marple said calmly. Someone wiped part of it. Slack sighed. Too many hands in this house. Too many stories. Charles stepped forward from the hall, hands in pockets, smile forced. I wasn't here, he said. I told you. I left before tea yesterday. Got the call later. Slack raised an eyebrow. You arrived awfully early this morning for someone who left early last night. Charles swallowed. I came the moment I heard. Nothing strange about that. Miss Marple watched him. His cuff sleeve hid the burn mark again. His posture stiffened every time the letter was mentioned. Mr. Alton approached from the kitchen, carrying a cup he didn't drink from. He nodded at Slack. I never went near the study, and I certainly didn't touch that letter. Slack eyed him sharply. You delivered it. Yes, Alton said. But I didn't open it, didn't read it, didn't go back inside. Miss Marple caught the lie in the speed of his words. He spoke too fast, too smooth. Charles cut in. Inspector, with respect, Ellen must be mistaken. She says she locked the study, but maybe she forgot. People forget things. Ellen's eyes widened. I did not forget. Her voice cracked. I locked it, and the key was still in my apron pocket this morning. Slack turned. So how did the drawer open itself? Ellen shook her head. I don't know, but I locked that door. Miss Marple moved to the study door. She ran her fingers along the frame. No scratches, no damage, no forced entry. She turned back. Inspector, the drawer held the earlier letters. If those letters are gone, someone knew exactly where to look. Slack nodded. Which means someone had a key, or someone was here last night after we left. Charles's jaw tightened. I told you, I left before. Tea. Alton stepped closer, and I never re-entered the cottage after delivering the post. Ellen whispered, You're both lying. Slack held up his hand. One at a time. But I'll say this. Your timelines don't fit. Not one of them. Miss Marple's eyes moved from face to face. Ellen trembling. Alton sweating. Charles smiling too tightly. 3 stories. 3 alibis. 3 versions of last night. All uncertain. All overlapping. All wrong in different ways. She could see the cracks forming, not in the facts, in the times, the moments, the hours no one agreed on. A gap here, a stray detail there, a sudden arrival, a too early departure. Nothing aligned, nothing settled. Miss Marple folded her hands behind her back, her voice soft, measured, certain. "The times," she said, "no longer matched." Evening settled over Street Mary Mead. A cool draught slipped through the hedges, the single sensory cue. Miss Marple walked the lane, slowly. The village looked calm, but the voices were not. People stood in clusters near the post office. Whispers, gasps, pressed lips. Someone spotted Miss Marple and hurried toward her. "Have you heard?" the woman asked breathlessly. "The bank. Our bank. It was robbed last night." Miss Marple paused. "Last night?" "Yes. Sometime between midnight and dawn. The police are inside now. Everything's in an uproar." Another villager rushed forward. "They say a large withdrawal was made yesterday, right before the robbery. Right before—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Mrs. Weatherby's name hung in the air like a cold mist. Miss Marple continued down the lane, her steps steady. Outside the bank, Inspector Slack stood, coat open, notebook in hand. He looked tired, very tired. "Miss Marple," he said, rubbing his forehead, "you choose the worst moments to appear." "Or the best," she replied softly. He sighed. "Fine. You've heard?" "Yes. The bank was robbed. Small branch, old vault. Someone clever forced the side window." "And Mrs. Weatherby's account?" Miss Marple asked. Slack hesitated. "Emptied. Yesterday?" He nodded. "A full withdrawal. Every pound. Signed under her name." Miss Marple folded her hands. "And then she died." "That," Slack said, "is a coincidence." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. "No coincidence ever wears that face." Slack looked irritated. "You think it's connected? People withdraw money every day. Old folks get nervous before winter." "Perhaps," Miss Marple said. "Or perhaps someone needed her savings quickly." Before she spoke, before she resisted, Slack tapped his notebook. "We're interviewing the staff. One clerk remembers her looking shaken. Said she signed fast. Didn't speak a word." Miss Marple nodded slowly. "And who brought her to the bank?" Slack blinked. "No one," said she. "Came with anyone." "Mrs. Weatherby rarely walked alone," Miss Marple said quietly. "She trusted company. Someone helped her withdraw that money. Someone stood beside her. Someone guided the pen." Slack frowned deeper. "That's a strong claim." "A logical one," Miss Marple replied. "Fear changes behavior." And she was afraid. Slack closed his notebook. "I'm checking signatures. The staff mentioned something odd." Miss Marple waited. He lowered his voice. The signature was shaky. Not her usual style. "Not her handwriting?" "That's the trouble," Slack muttered. "It looked like hers, but it felt forced." Miss Marple gazed at the dark windows of the bank. Letters vanished. A study unlocked. An urgent envelope gone. A withdrawal she didn't explain. A death called natural. Slack shifted. "So you think someone emptied her account, then silenced her?" Miss Marple breathed out slowly. "Inspector people kill for money every day. But this pattern, this precision, this timing—" She shook her head. "No, this wasn't greed alone. This was control. Fear. Desperation." Slack stared at her. "And what exactly was our thief after?" Miss Marple turned toward the fading light, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was no longer about money. It was about truth." The bell above the post office door gave a soft metallic ring, the single sensory cue. Miss Marple stepped inside. The room was nearly empty. Only the clerk, Mr. Dobbs, stood behind the counter, sorting rubber-banded stacks of letters. He looked up. "Morning, Miss Marple. Terrible business about Mrs. Weatherby." Miss Marple nodded. "Yes, terrible indeed. I hoped you might help me with something." Mr. Dobbs squinted, already uneasy. "What sort of something?" "Outgoing post," she said simply. "Yesterday's in particular." He blinked. "Well, we sent out quite a bit. People get busy before holidays. I'm interested in anything sent late in the day," she added. "After sunset." He frowned. "Odd request." Most truth is odd, Miss Marple murmured. He hesitated, then motioned for her to follow him to the back counter. Leaning down, he pulled a ledger forward. We record the late dispatches here. London bags, Bristol bags, local train sacks. Miss Marple scanned the page. A few typical names. One business account. A parcel to a niece. Nothing unusual. Then Mr. Dobbs tapped a line. This one. Struck me odd. A second envelope from Wetherby Cottage. Miss Marple stilled. A second envelope? Yes. Different from the urgent one the neighbour brought. But same handwriting. She clasped her hands. Who posted it? Man in a hurry, Dobbs said. Came right before the night train. Dropped it on the counter. Didn't even make small talk. Said it must go out tonight. Miss Marple's eyes sharpened. What did he look like? Tall, Dobbs said. Dark coat. Hat low. Couldn't see much. Voice was tight, like he'd run a distance. And the envelope? She asked softly. He reached into a small drawer, pulled out a slip of paper. We noted the address. Someone had to log it before it went in the sack. Miss Marple read the scrawled line, to Fairfax and Lawn, Solicitors, London. She folded the slip between her fingers. Solicitors, she repeated quietly. A legal matter. Not a holiday greeting. Not a bill. Mr. Dobbs shrugged. Could be anything. Miss Marple shook her head. No, not anything. Mrs. Wetherby feared letters, locked them away, whispered about them. Dobbs shifted uneasily. You think this letter concerns her death? I think it concerns her fear, Miss Marple answered. And fear always leaves a trail. She studied the slip again. Fairfax and Lawn. A firm known for estate issues. Disputes. Wills. Her mind aligned the pieces. Mrs. Wetherby receives threatening letters. An urgent one arrives hours before she dies. A second envelope, same handwriting, is mailed to a solicitor that same night by a man in a hurry. Someone was preparing paperwork. Someone did not want delay. Someone wanted a legal matter completed before questions were asked. Miss Marple slid the slip into her handbag. A quiet motion. Precise. Deliberate. Mr. Dobbs cleared his throat. That's all I know, Miss Marple. You've helped more than you realize, she said. She turned toward the door, her pace slow, measured, thoughts moving far faster. As she stepped outside, evening clouds gathered over the village. The lane was hushed. Only a soft breeze moved the leaves. Miss Marple paused, eyes narrowing. A second envelope. Same handwriting. Different sender. Mailed in haste. Mailed to protect someone. Not Mrs. Wetherby. It clicked into place. Clean. Cold. Certain. Someone mailed their own alibi. Rain tapped against the window, a steady, dull rhythm, the single sensory cue. Miss Marple set 2 cups on the small table. Steam rose softly. Everything else in the room was quiet. A knock sounded, measured, hesitant. Mr. Alton stepped inside when she opened the door. His coat was wet, his eyes restless. He did not remove his hat at first. A sign of nerves. Tea? Miss Marple asked, her tone gentle, unhurried. He cleared his throat. Yes, thank you. He sat on the very edge of the chair, hands clasped too tightly, foot tapping once, then stopping when he noticed her watching. Miss Marple poured tea. No rush, no question yet. She simply waited until the silence pressed on him. You wanted to see me? He asked. His voice wavered. Yes, Miss Marple said softly. There is something we must talk about. His fingers twitched. What? What thing? She placed a small folded slip on the table. A slip from Mr. Dobbs. The London letter. Mr. Alton froze. His breath caught. His eyes widened for just a second. Miss Marple noticed every detail. You posted this, she said quietly. Late last night. I didn't, he said quickly. Too quickly. I only delivered her letter. The urgent one. Nothing more. Miss Marple shook her head. The handwriting on the second envelope matched the first. Same slant. Same pressure. Same ink mark. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the rain, looked at the carpet, looked anywhere except her eyes. She was afraid of those letters. Miss Marple continued. You brought one, and then another was sent receiving the stamp of urgency, long after she died. He stood up suddenly. Chair scraped. Stop. You don't know anything. Sit down, Mr. Alton, she said softly. His chest rose and fell too fast. A trapped rhythm. Not anger. Fear. Miss Marple reached for her teacup. Steady. Calm. I asked the clerk about the sender. He remembers a man in a hurry. Coat wet. Breathing hard. Your height. Your build. I wasn't. And the signature in the bank ledger, she said. That is where you slipped. His mouth opened slowly. Confusion flickered. Her withdrawal form, Miss Marple continued. It was shaky, but not because she trembled, because someone traced her hand, guided it, forced it. Rain beat harder on the glass. Mr. Alton sat down abruptly. The fight drained from his shoulders. You can't prove anything, he whispered. It was not defiance. It was surrender. Miss Marple folded her hands. Proof arrives by post, Mr. Alton. His head dropped. A long breath escaped him. I didn't mean to kill her, he murmured. I only wanted the money. I thought she'd faint. Nothing more. I panicked. Miss Marple did not answer. She let the truth fill the room. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. She was screaming about the letters. She said she would expose everything. And so, Miss Marple finished quietly. You stopped her. He nodded. Barely. Weakly. Rain softened outside. The room grew still. He raised his head for the first time since entering. Eyes red. Voice thin. And just like that, the last mask slipped. He finally looked up and told the truth. The door opened without a knock. Inspector Slack stepped inside. His boots carried the faint smell of wet mud, the single sensory cue. He took one look at Mr. Alton. The slumped shoulders, the trembling hands, the broken voice still hanging in the air. Slack closed the door behind him. Am I interrupting? Miss Marple shook her head. No, Inspector. You've arrived at just the right moment. Alton didn't look up. Slack stepped closer. Mr. Alton, he said firmly. I heard enough from the lane to know we need a proper statement. Alton swallowed. I made mistakes. His voice was barely sound, barely breath. Slack crossed his arms. Mistakes or crimes? Alton flinched. He pressed both palms against his knees. I forged her signature, he whispered. I helped her to the bank. I told her the withdrawal was necessary, that she had overdue fees, that it was urgent. She trusted me. Miss Marple said nothing. She simply listened. Slack waited for more. Alton continued, and when she realized, when she saw the real letter, she said she'd report me, said she'd call the solicitor straight away. Slack raised an eyebrow. So you stopped her? Alton nodded slowly. I only meant to calm her. Just a little powder in her tea. To quiet her shaking. I didn't think. His voice cracked. I didn't think she'd collapse. Slack's jaw tightened. And when she did, Alton closed his eyes. I panicked. I wiped the mantle. I took the letters. I opened the study. I mailed the second envelope to the solicitor to make it look like she had been preparing something, a change of will, a final message, anything to confuse the timeline. And the bank robbery? Slack asked. Alton looked up for a moment, just a flicker. It wasn't just me. Slack leaned closer. Who else? Alton hesitated, then whispered, Charles. Silence filled the room. Miss Marple didn't blink. Slack didn't move. Alton continued, voice shaking. He knew about her savings. He knew about the letters. He said he'd help me scare her, just enough to control things. He climbed through the bank window, took the cash, said we'd split it, said it would all look like her doing. Slack straightened. So the charming nephew wasn't so charming after all. Miss Marple poured the last of the tea. Charles was never here to comfort her, she said softly. He came to collect what he believed was already his. Slack exhaled. Long, Slow, heavy. "I'll have them both in custody before nightfall," he said. He looked at Miss Marple. "You saw it from the start, didn't you?" Miss Marple offered the smallest, gentlest smile. "I only saw what didn't fit." Slack nodded. "That's why we rely on you." He turned toward Alton. "This is the end of the road, sir. You'll come quietly." Alton didn't resist. He simply rose, hands limp, eyes empty. His footsteps echoed through the cottage as Slack led him out. Miss Marple watched the doorway, watched the emptiness left behind. The cottage seemed to breathe again. Soft, relieved, balanced. The truth had been named, the lies undone, the fear removed, and for the first time since Mrs. Weatherby's death, the air felt right. Justice breathed again inside Weatherby Cottage. The morning settled gently over Street Mary Mead. Soft light, quiet streets, a stillness that always followed a long night of truth. Inside her cottage, Miss Marple set the kettle on the stove. It hummed as it warmed the single sensory cue, a low, steady sound, a comfort she trusted. She moved to the small writing desk near the window. The village green lay empty outside. No carriages, no footsteps, just thin sunlight over frost. Miss Marple opened her notepad. The pencil felt light between her fingers. She hesitated only a moment before writing. People hide greed in manners. She paused. Read the line back. Nodded once. A simple truth. A truth she had seen unfold many times. She wrote a second line. It begins quietly. Another line. It always ends the same. She lifted her head. A robin hopped across the sill outside the window. It tilted its head, watching her, then flew off in a quick flutter of wings. The kettle hummed louder. A soft tremor, a promise of warmth. Miss Marple rose and moved to the stove. She lifted the kettle carefully, poured water into her cup. The stream was steady, controlled. She always poured slowly. She took her seat again, cup in hand, steam rising, curling upward in thin, wavering lines. The warmth reached her fingers first, then her face. She breathed in the scent of tea, plain, comforting. She didn't think of the crime. Not yet. Her thoughts moved instead to Mrs. Weatherby's smile, the tired eyes, the trembling hand, the envelope she never opened. Miss Marple tapped the pencil once against the desk, not out of habit, out of respect. People trusted deeply in this village. Trusted neighbors, trusted family, trusted kindness. Sometimes that trust saved lives. Sometimes it cost them. She took a sip of tea. Warm, simple, clear. Her gaze drifted across the room, to the small shelf where she kept letters of her own, notes from the vicar, birthday cards, grocery lists, laundry reminders. Letters, she knew, could change the shape of a life. One word, one line, one name. And sometimes they changed who walked the earth the next morning. She set the cup down, listened to the fading hum of the kettle. The room held a quiet she appreciated. A quiet born from truth. Not justice alone. Truth. The deeper sort. The sort that exposed fear. The sort that revealed motive. The sort that forced even the boldest liar to speak. She picked up her pencil again. Wrote one last line for Inspector Slack. "You will find more in silence than in noise." She folded the note neatly, placed it beside the tea tray. Slack would collect it later. He always did. Miss Marple lifted her cup again, watched the last curl of steam rise. Thin, gentle, fading. Her voice, barely more than a breath, completed the morning. Truth cooled slower than tea. The garden lay quiet behind Miss Marple's cottage. Dew settled on the small stone path. Winter light touched the hedges in pale strokes. Miss Marple sat with her tea. The cup rested warmly between her palms. She turned her head toward the back window. Her gaze drifted to the garden Mrs. Weatherby had always admired. Birds hopped across the soil. 2 sparrows, 1 robin. They pecked at crumbs left near the old bird bath, the single sensory cue, the faint tapping of their beaks against stone. Life had returned to the garden, slowly, gently. as if the place itself understood the village had been shaken and needed breath to settle. Miss Marple exhaled, not tired, not relieved, simply thoughtful. She remembered Mrs. Weatherby describing that very garden weeks ago. She loved the winter birds, Miss Marple murmured. She said they never judged, they only returned. Silence eased into the room. The clock on the wall ticked softly, measured, steady, each tick a reminder that time never paused, not even for grief. Miss Marple lifted her cup, took a small sip, then set it down again. Her eyes remained on the birds. They moved without fear, without secrets. A thin breath escaped her lips. It wasn't money she feared, she whispered. It was betrayal. The word sat heavy in the air. Because it was true. Mrs. Weatherby had not trembled because of letters. She had trembled because one came from someone she trusted, someone who stood in her parlor, someone she let into her day, her nephew, her neighbor, her circle. Miss Marple folded her hands in her lap. People often assumed greed came from strangers, but in her long years, she had learned something else. Greed liked to sit close, very close. Charles wanted inheritance. Alton wanted money. Together, they pressed on the weakest parts of Mrs. Weatherby's heart. Fear, loneliness, hope that people still meant well. Miss Marple lowered her eyes. "How easily trust blinds," she said softly. A quiet breeze brushed the window pane. The sparrows fluttered upward and settled again. The robin jumped onto the fence, puffed its feathers, and sang once a short, bright note. Miss Marple watched without moving. The small creatures restored a kind of balance the night had stolen. But inside her chest, she felt something else. A steady weight. Not grief alone. Responsibility. Villages forget quickly. They smooth over the sharp edges of tragedy. They tidy the narrative. They soften blame. They heal fast, because they must. Already she had heard murmurs outside. It had been an unfortunate affair. A sad misunderstanding. A tragic moment in an otherwise peaceful town. Miss Marple knew better. She always did. She touched the edge of her teacup. Warm, stable, simple. Then she looked back at the garden, the birds, the sky, the quiet fence line. Her voice barely rose above her breath. It didn't need to. "The village will forget," she whispered. Her eyes did not leave the garden. "But I won't." Davis returns with a soft smile. The room feels calm again. He glances at the lost letter, then at the untouched teacup on the table. "Tell me," he says gently, "would you have noticed that cup before? Anyone else did?" He leans in a little. "Which clue reached you first? The letter, the silence, or the worry in her hands?" He lets the questions settle, warm as steam rising from fresh tea, the single sensory cue. Then he smiles. "Thank you for being here tonight. And tomorrow, another kettle will boil." One quiet lane waits in the dark. A single borrowed coat hangs on a lonely hook. Its buttons hold a secret, and its pockets hide a truth no one meant to find. Footsteps echo softly across the frost, careful and slow, as if someone hopes not to be seen. But secrets breathe, even in winter. And in the cold hedge-lined path ahead, something is waiting to be uncovered. Listen closely. The wind through the hedges carries the first warning. Davis leans close, his voice barely above a breath. "If you felt the chill of Weatherby Cottage tonight, leave a emoji below." He pauses, letting the quiet settle. "Your little teacup keeps this corner alive, and it tells me you're listening closely." A soft smile in his tone. "The algorithm loves mystery, and so do we." Fade in. Soft, steady words appear as Davis's voice follows. Written in the warmth of curiosity, for those who still believe that every quiet village holds a secret. The text lingers, gentle and calm, and for those who know, truth cools slower than tea.